Hi, this is Greg from gregswhiskygray.com, the website, and more recently the YouTube channel. Mainly in English, because the demand in French is alas not very high. So I will continue to do mostly my reviews in English and sometimes in French as well. Well, this is, I had a summer break. It was a bit difficult. It's not over. I have a lot of things going on the channel and the website as well. I told you about different things on my previous summer break and what's new video. Before I forgot, I want to thank everyone, newcomers to whiskey, connoisseurs, professional, everyone that's watching the channel and supporting the channel as well as the website. Also to thank the whiskey community on YouTube that's really supportive and really very, very good. Thank you so much, guys. Also to tell you that I will be going live next week on Chris on the Last Drop channel week videos for all next week with 1 to 3 or more. I think it's 1 to 2 or 3 maximum guests every day from Monday to Sunday. Chris is gonna receive a lot of people, and I hope you will watch every evening's live stream. You could see me on Wednesday 14, along with Andrew from Prestige Liquid Whiskey from Australia. He's from Australia, and of course Chris will be hosting all of us. So thanks again to Chris. Apart than that, this is an attempt, and I ask you to be kind about it, because this is an attempt to condensate 2 reviews in one. Yeah, I know it's a bit crazy, or maybe 3, because I started with the idea of covering the private edition from GLENMORANGIE because I liked a lot this one, the Alta, which is the most recent private edition, which is also the 10th edition, 10th expression from this series that goes back. Oops. I got about 20 bottles on the table, so to illustrate everything. The series goes back from 2010 with Sonalta, which was a PX sherry finish whiskey, to the 2009 10th edition Alta, which is made with local wild yeast. It's not a finish. And when I was studying a bit the topic to do the video, I realized there were some passages, passerelles in French, between the barley question, the wood question, the maturation, or finish it, and the overall production of whiskey. So I'm gonna try to kind of mix things, and for more precise information, please have a look on my website. I reviews almost entirely the vocabulary. Yes, it's in French, but you can now translate a lot of things from Google, and you have all the different cask types, capacity of cask and type of cask, and what they're used for. I tried to update this today because I saw my topic is going to be ahead of the website, so I don't like much the idea of it, but can be cool also to do the different things on the video. So yes, I'm not going to list everyone, but well, let's say there were some focused on a special finish, where it was wine finish, Italian wine with the Artine GLENMORANGIE expression, where there was Burgundy and Côte-du-Rhône wine, Bourgogne et Côte-du-Rhône in French, with the Campanta from 2014 edition, or Madeira with the Bacalta in 2017. There was also a very unusual rye edition called Spios last year in 2018. I spoke about this one, which is from 2011, which is the second one. It's hard to get which is a fine alta, which is Oloroso sherry, but I don't know how they did that, but they try also. It was the other interest of the series, not only sherry, but it was they tried to recreate a recipe from the beginning of the 20th century, and in this recipe was lightly peated malt involved. So it's very tiny, but it's very interesting to have this smoky note. So it says it's from an original recipe of 1903 year, and it's lightly peated American oak and Oloroso sherry cask. And of course, you have to know all this series is non-chill filtered and natural color. The natural color isn't stated, but I've been told about this. So, okay. It's like in Highland Park. I hear different things that sometimes, but so yeah, natural color and but chill filtration. Okay, is that clear? Natural color since 2007 and chill filtration, except if it's stated non-chill filtered for Highland Park. It's 2007, guys. Okay, this one's for Ellen, but love you, Ellen. Okay, so I wanted to speak first about barley. Have to be short because I did my studies, my homework, and it's too long. Frankly, I have four files before me. If I don't want to do half an hour or an hour or more, I have to be quick. Let's say that, and sorry if it's a bit too general and exceptions exist and I may mistake on the proportions, etc. But it seems that the more interesting in terms of the quantity they can use, the big names, the big companies of whiskies. We will talk mainly here about Scotch whiskey, right? With a few exceptions. Then they use mainly optic barley, which is 40% of the overall. 40% of stated in 2008, of which I found on the internet. It's 40% of the production in spring for every distillery in Scotland. It comes from optic barley. Otherwise, there is of course Concerto, Golden Promise, getting more rare. There was Odyssey, Profino, Maris Otter Barley that does a big comeback. By the way, Maris Otter Barley was used for this to sell private edition of Glenmorangie, which is I love the three ones. I have the Fine Alta, the To Sell, and the Alta. I think they're beautiful whiskies, and unfortunately the Fine Alta is getting now very expensive on the second market. It's a remarkable whiskey, the best of the three so far. Then you have other kinds. I won't list everyone, but I wanted to speak a bit quickly about this, which is an Aran. You have the box here, sorry. Which is an Aran. There was an experiment from 2012, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. You will find references on my website anyway. It was the first edition at 46%. The second one was a cask strength edition. It's using beer barley, which is 5,000 years barley used in agricultural soil in Scotland. It is said to have been introduced in the whiskey industry around the 8th century. Sorry. No, I'm saying stupid. Maybe, okay. Anyway, I won't cut it, sorry. So beer barley it has 6 strengths instead of the 2 usual. I hope I'm not mistaken on this. And it's supposed to be more refined. I don't know. Honestly, when you try it, it's very good. But the difference, people from industrial will say 60% of the whiskey's taste comes from the cask. But if you consider the yeast and the barley are important ingredients as well, and the water, things has to be a bit moderated. But of course, the most important impact is from the cask. But if you have a bad distillate or a bad quality barley and yeast, you probably won't do a big result. Anyway, so big question. Beer barley was reintroduced around 1965 for some distilleries to use it, but it's very in the margin. And so there were Bruichladdich used it first before Aaron used it, and there's also French Michel Couvreur, which is an independent bottler and who likes to mature Scotch whiskey in Burgundy in France. He passed away, but his daughter is continuing the business, and they now produce their own young whiskey as well from France entirely. But Michel Couvreur, was one of the first to introduce beer barley whiskey from Scotland in France, and also among the first to state it on the label. I guess it was even before Bruichladdich. And then Aaron did it lately, but it's an experiment with the Institute of Agronomy of Orkney. So the barley comes from Orkney, and this renewal and very marginal, I have to state once again, use of beer barley which is mainly cultivated in Orkney, Shetlands, Caithness, and some Western Isles as well, is not a big thing in the whiskey industry, but it gives something more genuine. Please have a look on the website again, and also on Aaron's website, and if you can get this expression, it's very interesting. Okay, so I don't want to be too long about this. Also, I wanted to state that some distilleries use local barley. Of course, the most famous one, even if it's second series of it, this one shall not say mistakes. Okay, forgot. I think it was from 2015 or something like that. You'll find information on my website because I can't check it right now. But the first editions of local barley, which has become mythic and absolutely fantastic stuff, whiskey with the old style of Springbank with a lot of sherry, old style sherry, were bottled around early 2000, and they were 25 to 33 years old whiskies. They were out of this world. Nothing to do with what they do now, though the quality is still very high, and I love this distillery. So, and this is probably one of the best. It's a 16 years old cask strength. Probably one of the best they did in the relaunch of the local barley range. Is it stated? Yeah, sorry. So it's 2016, distilled in 1989, bottled in 2016, and there were 9,000 bottles. It was 54.3 ABV. Okay, so I think that's it now for the first part. Sorry to be long. And now we're going to go to the second part, which for me was also a lot of research and then mixes the question of the cask types. And once again, please have a look on the website. And I will just give you a few examples of things that can be done. Starting with a personal statement, which is just an opinion. That is that for me, if you want to mature whiskey under 30 liters cask, it's very risky, because the wood impact is huge and too much. So now it's not a question of such, in my experience, of years or months, but it's more a question of days. If you don't want to have your whiskey over woody, you know, you don't want to eat the piece of wood. So, and even with a 30-liter cask, which is probably the most current in some distilleries offer of small casks. McMyra, for instance, did that a few years ago, one of the first to do that, to sell the whiskies at in 30-liter casks. And even there, the impact is huge. The more the cask is wide, the wider the cask is, sorry, the lower is the impact of the wood in the maturation. So when you have butts which are 500, you know, it's a problem, because we can find a lot of information that are contradictory. So I used mainly for what I'm saying now the Bruichladdich statement about the cask policy. They do, and they listed on the website a few years ago, I don't know if it's still there, all the cask types, sorry, they were using, and the others that were on the market. But I forgot some. They have others that they could have stated, but they listed at least all the ones they use or they came across. And if you go to other websites or even serious books, you have a lot of variations, which is a problem when you come to speak about it. But I will try my best. For instance, best example I can say is quarter cask. Quarter cask, I found references from 45 to 80 liters. But when you are speaking of one of the first, second maturation in the history, one of the first is, we're speaking of, sorry, I gotta check it out now. Where did I put that? Okay, probably mid, I don't have it, sorry, bad word, mid 2000s, I will say. With a quarter cask, I discovered recently it was not 45, 60, 80, but 125 liters, which is half a hogshead, almost half a barrel, let's say, American barrel, less of course. But and why this? It's because you use a quarter of a butt, which is not necessarily a butt, not necessarily sherry butt, but it's often used in that way, in that sense. Sherry butt or butt with are usually 500 liters or a bit more. So it's 125 liters gives less impact. Casks give less impact at 45 liters. This you can imagine. So it's a moderate acceleration of the wood impact for the quarter cask, which is an expression I like. Other than that, I would quickly list small casks such as Tub from Bruichladdich. They invented the word, I guess. Like they said, the smallest viable cask possible. Then you have an interesting attempt they did at Springbank with the three expressions. They have Springbank, Hazelburn, and Longrow. They did what they called rundlets and Kildakins editions. So they used 18 gallons or so cask, which is 68 liters and 82 liters cask to do this, which accelerated a bit the aging. And they did, for the Hazelburn I have here, which was bottled in 2014 at 50.1 ABV. It's a 10 years old, and yeah, this is the example of the cask they used back into the 17th and 18th century, they say on the back label. So this accelerates a bit the oaky character of the whiskey, which is already important at Springbank in my opinion. But it also is interesting because it's mainly a wood maturation. I mean bourbon wood maturation, sorry. So it enhances the ginger, the coconut, the malted barley, the kind of porridgey impression you have when you drink a fully bourbon matured Springbank from the early 2000 or even from now. Okay, so then everyone knows now the American Standard barrel goes from 190 to 200 liters. It's new oak, of course, and then you have the hogshead around 225 to 250, which is a remade cask, which, you know, when the staves are getting a bit in a bad state, some staves, they replaced it by new oak. So you can have a hogshead which is made of sherry as well as of bourbon, so you never know. Then we have the barrique, which is a bit à la mode, trendy because of Cavalen uses vino barrique, what they say, which is only 250, but can be a bit less or a bit more. You have the cognac cask from Limousin, which are often 350, but still there can be variations. Then you got 500 to 6 or more for the port pipe, which is whiskies that are made of cask with held previously port. We got a good example here with one of the oldest BALVENIE finishes. We're gonna speak again about BALVENIE, and then the sherry butt, the drum for the Madeira, which is around 600 liters. The pension, which is 300 to 400 or more. The octave, which is around 50 liters, but sometimes even less. And yeah, I wanted also to state that for those who are familiar with Glenfiddich, 15 years old, and when the companies speak about Solera, which is mainly to keep the content of the cask, a gigantic cask, which is called foudre in French. It's a vatting vessel, in fact, more than a cask, of course. They take off 50% to let's say 70%, 75% of the content to bottle it and keep the rest, not forever, but for years and years and sometimes decades. And this helps to round off, but also add some wood to the next content. And these, for instance, these Solera vats are used in wines, producing vinegar, brandy, many things, and they can go up to 200,000 or 400,000 or more liters. But when about the Solera that Glenfiddich uses, it's 37,000 liters. So you can see you can do a huge batch with that. And yeah, it's a blending process in a way, you have to know that. Other than that, to correct some things I saw earlier on, bourbon barrels, people think that sherry you know that bourbon barrels were used forever in Scottish industry and then sherry appeared. No, it's the contrary. As I studied it, I learned that bourbon barrels were used only after 1940, and mainly, of course, after the Second World War. So before, what they were using? They were using new oak, they were using French oak, and they were using also casks that were holding other things than whiskey. And that explains some of the reputation of early Campbeltown whiskies. You know, they did some in the 19th century. They did some experiment with herring cask or fish or stuff like that. So the reputation of the the whiskies of that area were very bad at the time, before they were famous, of course. Okay, so now to the study of the finishes in the single malts of Scotland. What I found out is that the first recorded, apparently, they say the distillery itself says one of the first, so I have to be cautious and say one of the very early first BALVENIE single malt that were using the finishing, in fact was more a double maturation, was BALVENIE. The difference between double maturation and finishing isn't legal. It's just a matter of opinion, and for me it divides in two things. Let's say if it's from 3 weeks to 1 or 2 years, about a whiskey that's more than 10 years, it's a finishing. If it's half of the time of the age of the whiskey, or let's say 25% of the time, or well, several years, you can say it's a double maturation. Then, of course, these must be moderated by the fact of the nature of the previous vessel of second maturation or finish. Is it a first fill, refill, and how many fills, etc. See, so the question is very complex. But what I heard, it's in 1983 that BALVENIE did release its classic BALVENIE, matured in American oak and then in sherry oak. And at the time it has a shape like cognac, an old cognac bottle, or Armagnac. I had the chance to try it, and it was very good in an old whiskey show. And 10 years later, they reissued it, they republished it under the shape you know it well, which is the double wood. So double wood comes from 1993, and for me it was the first single malt finish, at least to hit the shelves in Europe, in mainland Europe. Then you have 1994 GLENMORANGIE, which is a pioneer clearly in wood finishing, wood maturation, and more. So the portwood, this is the first portwood finishes they did, and it was way before what people know now, because I hear sometimes some average informations which are not true, so I have to correct it, I'm sorry. The current finishing range, Nectar d'Or, which is Sauterne finish, La Senta, which is sherry finish, Quinta Ruban, which is port finish, they only came out in 2007 with the rebranding by LVMH along the way. So these are not the first finishes in every kind of wood I've talked about: sherry, Sauterne, and port. Even more than that, and I have to show you this. I put some French whiskies there that are about maturation finishes, and innovation in maturation and stuff. And this KORNOG, which is a Glenmorangie distillery from Brittany, Sauternes matured entirely, is an example of what they do. This is a recent one, this is of 2013, but they did it back to 1997. Let me check out. Yeah, 1989, and they were in the Celtic Whiskey Company. They were working in importing, it's the same company, the distillery and the bottler. They were working in maturing or finishing whiskies from the Speyside and the Highlands of Scotland to France in their own barrels that held previously Sauternes or Armagnac, or even different kinds of French wines. So this French company was the pioneer for the Sauternes finish, I think, especially, and for, of course, Armagnac and Cognac. So that goes back to, if I don't want to be saying stupid things, so I talked about 1999, but before that I have also to mention there were in 1994, the Thym l'Hermitage finish. Thym l'Hermitage is a Rhône Valley wine from France. And 1996, Glenmorangie did the first Madeira wood and cherry wood. So you see, it goes back a long, long time ago. Then we have in 1997 and even 6, for the first edition I saw, a BALVENIE 21 years old portwood, which was previously 47.6 ABV, and I noticed now it's 40% only, with increase of price, of course. Why not? Then I'm going to show you a bottle which is not exactly the one I'm talking about, but it's the same expression, same range. It's empty, but I got a sample of it. It's Lagavulin 91 here, but there were even earlier editions. First wine I think is from 1998. The bottling, not the year of distillation. And it was a sherry Pedro Jimenez finish. About the finishes in sherry, as like I said, I don't want to go to an hour or so. I'm getting late already. Please check out the website, because I listed there around 10 to 12 different kinds of sherry. So it's very complicated. The most often used is Oloroso sherry, of course, and even the nature of it has changed, as talked about it already in different lives from friends and on the website. PX is a bit less common, but it comes more and more as it's sweet and seems to please people, so I think companies know that. Yeah, 1998, probably first use of PX sherry in Scottish whiskey. Next year, 1999, let's not forget Glenmorangie was also a pioneer, with not this bottle, but the same kind of, this one is from distillery exclusive, only bottle your own. But it's a Chardonnay cask finish, and Chardonnay is a white wine from France, so it was in a grape variety as well. So it was the first, one of the first also attempt to make wine finishes, French wine finishes in the history of Scottish whiskey. Then in 2000 there was the Glenlivet French oak finish in matured, finished in Limousin cask, cognac cask, and then there were 1999, along with the Glenmorangie, there was a Beaumont, which has had, with another label, the darkest, 15 years old, and the darkest was finished in Oloroso sherry as well. And the year after, I think they did the Dawn, which is a ruby port cask, another variety of port. Then 2001, Glenmorangie released the Côte de Beaune finish, which is another wine from the east of France. Glenfiddich did his Grand Reserve which was one of the first rum cask finish, probably, I can't be sure 100%, but one of the first, along with Bushmills, 21 years old, from Ireland. I'm not going to list them all, they're too many, honestly, even in my page. But it was very interesting to do that research. I didn't do it as much as before that. And yeah, I'm gonna stop at 2002 because there's too many after. And then yeah, Springbank did his Glenmorangie did its first Southern finish, the 91 edition, and then they did a 15 years old as well later on. And then Springbank did his first series of wood expressions, and it was a rum cask. I'm showing you here a more recent expression with the same label, if you see it. So here it's an Italian wine, prestigious wine called Barolo, from the Gaja domain. So it's Gaja Barolo finish. It's 4 years in, this one was 9 years old, bottled, in 4 years in refill bourbon oak, and then 5 years in fresh means first fill. Gaja Barolo casks, so distilled in February 2004, bottled in October 2013, with an ABV of 54.7. Okay. About Aran, I forgot to say it was one of the first back in I think early 2004, probably 3 or 4. As they had 2 young casks. Me, I liked the distillated matured bourbon cask, but I know some didn't like it, and probably all the casks weren't satisfying to the producer's opinion. So they started to do a lot of finishes, some at cask strength, some at 50. It was way before they had the finishes range, and they did everything they had on their hands, like Murray McDavid and Bruichladdich at some point. And they did things as weird as Marsala cask, Champagne cask, Calvados cask, previously to Springbank. Yeah, it was somewhere good, somewhere a bit awkward. And then a few years ago they relaunched the idea of the finishes in a more tight range with 4 or 5 expressions. Mainly they have the sherry, they have the Madeira, the Sauterne, and they have, this is the Madeira I like very much. For me, one of the best they did. And also Italian one called Amarone. I have a sample to try, thanks for this one. That's not it, but we're not far. I have to mention also among successful from this year rum cask finishes from Scotia, the 2003, which is Campbelltown Festival edition, exclusive. I liked it a lot. Previously, and it rejoined 2 topics I've talked about earlier on. There's 2 French whiskies. There's this one that's matured partly in sherry cask and partly in Brittany casks from the Brocéliande forest, which is interesting, which gives some more tight oak to the blend. Yes, it's a single malt, but there's a blend of casks and a blend of different things. So it's another topic I may speak about soon, the question of blended whiskey and the question of blends. Okay, let's not lose too much time. And this one, which is a kind of UFO of this year, which is a French whiskey matured in Sauterne cask, but in acacia wood cask, which is very unusual. Some French distilleries, and it's a French distillery called NORTHMAEN from Normandy, uses that, and I think this works pretty well in that case it's a 6 years old, but you can see the color is completely crazy. Yeah, so that's it. I'm not drinking whiskey by the water. No whiskey without water, by the way. Yes, so that's almost it about finishes. A few last things. Earlier on, there's a company which is very famous for luxury whiskies and a lot of caramel added. Sorry, but it's no double speak channel. Lots of caramel added and chill filtering and all that, and low ABVs, which sometimes annoy people. I had the chance to visit the distillery, see what I think about it on my website, on my report about my Scottish journey from last year. Mixed opinions, interesting things, less interesting things, and a bit shocking sometimes during the visit. But when a whiskey is good, it's good. And Richard Patterson, which I know a bit, is the master blender for more than 4 years of this company. You might have seen his crazy videos on YouTube as well. And he did an experiment that was on the paper absolutely not to do, and probably an error and something giving very bad results. But strangely, for me and for some reviewers, it did work. I don't know why, but probably yeah, I know why. It's because Richard knows what he's doing, even if he does commercial things. Probably meant to do so, but with this one, I'm speaking, of course, of the King Alexander III. With this one, Richard did a thing that's probably never been done before. I know it has been done after that recently, probably I think in the US. It's a 6 different maturations whiskey with no age statement, a very hefty price now. Had the chance to have my bottle a long time ago at half price. It's around 150 to 200 euros, something like that. And this Dalmore is, if I'm not mistaken, because it's hard to remember, it's made of I don't know what the color variation. Why this color variations now? So this one is made of Marsala cask, Cabernet Sauvignon, Mathusalem, which is very old sherry, cask, bourbon cask, port cask, Madeira, something like that. You can check it out on my website anyway. You have 6 different maturations, so it's going up to too much. But for me it worked, and unlike many other whiskies, which I don't like the winey side, in this one I think it works well. So that's it. I don't know if I covered well the topic. It was a lot of work to summarize in too long time, sorry, but I tried my best to shorten it, and I hope you find it interesting and that it will lead you to do your own researches on the website and also on other channels that did cover those 3 topics of barley, of wood and finishes and all stuff. I forgot to speak about this. I see. Of course, there are finishes in other countries, and about a distillery that's very close to do a really terroir whiskey. Yes, I think Westland is very close to this. Not with this bottling. This is the Sherwood. But with the Guyana oak expression, which is using local oak, local barley, if I'm not mistaken, and different kinds of barley. They're very innovative. Even with this bottling, they use 5 different kinds of malted malted barley. They use, I think, if I'm not mistaken, brewery yeast instead of distillery yeast, which is more fragile but more flavory, it seems. Yeah, they're doing really interesting job. There are many experiments made now in American distilleries. Other channels such Liquor House, Scottish SINGLE might speak about that better than me. And Eric Waite, of course, we have been traveling a lot around the US and Scotland, but around the US to discover different distilleries. So yeah, have a look at what these guys say. I think that's it. I finish with the future, maybe of whiskey, which is Westland here, and RBK, for instance, in Scotland, which recreated a rye for first time in 100 years in Scotland. So that's it. I hope you found it interesting. Sorry to be very long on this. I didn't know how to split that in 2 or 3 videos. I don't do often videos, but I think you found that interesting, and if so, please give me a like, click the notification bell if you want to see other videos, and take care. See you soon. Bye.